Good afternoon, sir. Your fighter did well yesterday, Mario Barrios. Where do you think he stands in the welterweight division amongst the top fighters?
The way he performed last night, I think he's right up there with the elite. Obviously, he's already been in with Keith Thurman, right? So he's been in there with the big time. And, in the case of the Keith Thurman fight, I thought, he was one or two punches. Keith Thurman, his own self, had mentioned, hey, if he was able to follow up after that one body shot that he hit me with, I probably wouldn't have been able to continue. So that tells us there he was this close to pulling out a W. But obviously, Keith Thurman's experience, it was his first fight at 147, and you're going against one of the absolute best. But he proved he's right there at that level. Now, he's capitalized off that with the performance last night where he won every second of every minute of every round against a guy that we all know was in a tough fight with Adrian Broner. A lot of people feel that he beat Adrian Broner. So for Mario to go out there and dominate him the way that he did, it shows he's at the elite level, and now it's just a matter of getting the opportunity and going against the absolute best.
Yesterday you mentioned Ortiz, right?
Mm-hmm.
Virgil Ortiz Jr.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you mentioned Jaron Ennis, but among the two, which one would you want the most?
Whatever they present itself, obviously Louis Cubas Jr., now Heyman, I had said it earlier, I'll say it again, there's an old saying that, let the trainers train, let the managers manage, and let the promoters promote. So what they feel is viable, doable, or what can get done, we're ready, willing, and able to go against anybody. But again, that said, it'd probably be easier to make the Jaron Ennis fight than the Virgil Ortiz fight. But one thing I do know about Al Heyman, he's a man that wants the best possible fights for the public. That's what he's about. That's what PBC is about. So there's no doubt in my mind he would be open and willing to make the fight with Virgil Ortiz, but it's just a matter of would their side be willing to do it, and so we'll see how that plays out.
I see. Now, you mentioned earlier that you worked with Hector Garcia, one of Tank Davis' opponent. And now he's supposed to fight against Ryan Garcia. How do you see the fight happening with Tank and Ryan?
I think Ryan's a tremendous talent, right? Fast twitch muscle, so he's very, very quick, got a fast left hook. There's a lot of different things that he can do to mitigate Tank with his physical attributes, with his length, his size, and so forth. I lean towards Tank because I think his ring IQ is really, really exceptional. He's been on the big stage. He's fought in the pay-per-view, so he has that notch under his belt, and he has the great equalizer. He can flat out punch. So I think it's going to be an interesting fight. Would I be shocked if Ryan Garcia beat him? No, but I am favoring Gervonta Davis to win that fight, and I just think his experience. I think the fact that he's been on the big stage. And I think his ring IQ is what's going to really come into play in that fight.
So the fight's happening at a catch weight of 136. But let's say if the fight happened at the normal weight of Ryan Garcia, which he fights out like 140, and you saw Tank Davis at 140, and how do you see the fight happening if it happened at 140?
Well, I think, that's a whole different dynamic. I think Garcia would have a much better shot at winning the fight. I think that fight right there would be much more conducive for him. But that said, 36, again, I like Gervonta Davis in that fight at 136. I think the punching power is going to be the difference, and the ring IQ. But at 40, obviously, I think Garcia would have a much better chance to win that fight. And I would still slightly favor Tank in that fight.
Do you think Ryan Garcia would be drained at 136?
Well, definitely going to be much more drained than he is at 40. But we'll see. He's a young guy. We'll see how it's not just making the weight. How does he rehydrate? How does he recuperate? How does he come back later on that night? So we'll see. Time will tell. But the one thing he does have on his side is youth.
Yes. Now, you've worked against the Tank actually twice, and then you give Tank the edge in this fight.
Mm-hmm.
How far do you think Tank can bring his power to? Like, to which weight division?
I think his power carries all the way to 147 pounds. There's no two ways about that. I've seen him in with junior middleweights and stop them in the gym with 16-ounce gloves, right? But now in a fight with 8-ounce gloves, is there some welterweights he could beat because of his punching power? Sure, but there'd be a lot of welterweights he'd have a lot of trouble with because of their length, and they also can punch too. So if he was ever to go at 47, would it surprise me if he'd be able to win a title at 47? Probably not. Would he be able to be elite and be a guy that would beat multiple guys at 47? I don't think so. I don't think he could beat, the Jaron Ennis's and those types of guys at 47. Definitely Terrence Crawford, Earl Spence. I just think their punching power is on par with his at that weight. Plus, you got to deal with the length, you got to deal with the size, and because of his height, I think he'd be in a lot of trouble.
Were you shocked when you saw Foster beat Vargas?
I thought Ray Vargas, like I said, is a tremendous fighter. I thought he probably would edge him out a little bit with experience, but looking back at it, hindsight is 20/20, right? So, looking back on it, you kind of realize, well, Ray, was a small 22-pounder, not in terms of height, but bone structure-wise. Not a guy that's a very big guy. And then he only did, one fight or two fights at 26, if I'm not mistaken. And then to go right into a fight at 130. So maybe just didn't have the punching power that was needed, to mitigate some of the things that Foster was doing. So from that aspect, and taking nothing away from Foster, he did what he had to do. You're fighting a great fighter in Ray Vargas. Ray Vargas, I think, is going to be a Hall of Famer, no two ways about it. But I think probably the size and Foster's a pretty tricky fighter too, right? He's got some good skill set about him and does some smart things in the ring. But I think probably the difference was Vargas didn't have the punching power to, really mitigate him.
I see. So you think that Vargas should stay at featherweight, or you think he should probably go back down to junior featherweight?
Well, I think featherweight would probably be the best weight class for him right now because he's getting a little bit older. But that said, are there some guys that he could probably beat at 130? Or would make a great fight? Him and Navarrete would be an amazing fight. Him and Brandon Figueroa at 126 pounds would be a great fight. But there's some guys he could probably fight at 30 that were former guys, smaller coming up, that maybe won a title at 130. I just think maybe Foster is the naturally 130 pounder.
Yes.
And but take nothing away from him. He did what he had to do, and he's a world champion now. And my hats go off to Foster and his team, and Aaron and Bobby and all the guys that work with him.
Now at 130, this is now a stacked division. New champions, fairly new champions. What fights do you want to see at this weight division happening?
I'd like to see Hector Garcia versus Navarrete unifying the titles. I think that would be an amazing fight. So hopefully maybe that could be made. Again, I know Al Heyman and Louis DeCubas Jr., they've never been ones to ever stop and get in the way of great fights happening. Obviously they work with PBC, but that said, one thing I do know about Al Heyman, Louis DeCubas Jr., they're all about making the best possible fights for the fans. And I know that for a fact. Of course, there's a business side to everything in life, right? So no matter what, whether it's pro baseball, pro football, pro basketball, whether you're an attorney, there's a business side to everything. So, you got to do fair-minded business decisions. But that being said, one thing I do know, like I said, first and foremost, even probably more so than any promoter there's ever been, Al Heyman puts the fans number one. There's no two ways about that. He proved that with Sean Porter fighting Terrence Crawford. He proved that with Deontay Wilder fighting Fury. He's done it time and time again.
Of course. Anyways, thank you for your time, sir, and I wish a great career for all your fighters.
Thank you. God bless you.